This is the story about a little dog whose name was Lady. Lady was a very pretty little dog, and she lived in a house with a very nice man named Jim, his wife, and a little baby. All day long, Lady played in the house, out of the house, and even next door, where she had two very good dog friends. The little black one is called Jock, and the big brown one is called Trusty. One day, Lady was talking to her friends.
Hello, Jock.
Hello, lady. You're looking very pretty this morning.
Thank you, Jock. And how are you, Trusty?
Just fine, Miss Lady, just fine. And how's your fine master, Jim?
Oh, I'm so excited. Jim is going to have a visitor at our house. Her name is Aunt Sarah, and she's coming to stay for 2 weeks.
Well, how nice.
And I'm sure she'll like you very much, Miss Lady.
But what none of them knew was that Aunt Sarah didn't like dogs. The only animals she liked were cats, and she was bringing her 2 cats with her. The cats are singing. Listen.
We are Siamese, if you please. We are Siamese, if you don't please. We are former residents of Siam. There are no finer cat than I am. We are Siamese with very dainty paws. Please observing paws containing dainty claws. Ah, yes. Now we looking over our new domicile. If we like, we stay for maybe quite a while.
Just then, Lady came home and walked in the house. Well, you know, cats and dogs very often don't get along too well. And when those cats saw Lady, they started to scream and yell and run all over the place. And Aunt Sarah began to yell.
Get that dog out of here! Oh, my poor cats! Stop! Oh, my goodness! Come here, you dog! Oh, now I've got you! Now get out! I won't have a dog in this house while my cats are here!
And poor Lady was put out of the house. Well, the next day, Jim, who owned Lady, explained to Aunt Sarah that Lady was really a nice dog, and that she should be permitted to come in the house, and that she wouldn't hurt the cats if they didn't bother her. Aunt Sarah didn't like that very much, but there was nothing she could do about it. So Lady continued to come in and out of the house whenever she pleased. One afternoon, when Jim was away, the 2 cats decided to try and catch the canary that lived in the cage in the living room. They sneaked up to the cage, crouched down low, and jumped right up at the cage. The cage fell down, the door flew open, and those cats were just about to stick their paws in and get the canary when Lady heard the noise and came running in to see what it was. And while Lady was chasing the cats away from the canary, in walked Aunt Sarah.
Lady, stop chasing my cats! Oh, my goodness, look what that dog has done. Knocked over the canary cage, chased my cats, and frightened them half to death. That terrible dog. I'll see that she's put out of the house for good.
That afternoon, Aunt Sarah told Jim that Lady had knocked down the canary cage and chased the cats. Since dogs can't talk to people, there was no way Lady could tell Jim that it was the cats who had gone after the canary and that she was chasing the cats away to save the poor little canary's life. So Jim said to her,
Lady, you've been a bad dog. So now you must go out of the house and live outside. At night, you'll sleep in the doghouse, and you can't come in and play with us anymore. Come on now, Lady. Out you go.
And Lady was left all alone outside. Poor Lady was so sad, she just sat in front of her doghouse crying, when all of a sudden a little dog she had never seen before walked right up to her and said,
Hello, honey. What are you crying about?
Oh, who are you?
Just a dog around town, honey. My name's Tramp.
Mine's Lady.
What are you crying about, lady?
Well, we have a visitor at our house named Aunt Sarah, and she brought some cats. And they chased the canary, and I chased the cats, and they said it was all my fault, and now they won't let me back in the house at all.
Well, that's nothing to cry about, honey. I live outside all the time. I have no home at all, and I'm happy. Come on along with me, and I'll show you how a dog can really have a good time.
And so, for the first time in her life, Lady left home, running down the street with Tramp to see what a dog's life away from home could be like. Well, Lady and Tramp went running down the street. Tramp was what you might call a stray dog. He had no home, no master, and didn't even wear a collar. No one fed him, and to eat he had to hunt for his own food up back alleys, behind restaurants, or wherever he could beg for it. But nevertheless, he was a happy dog and had a lot of friends around town. Lady seemed to enjoy being with him as they trotted down the street.
Where are we going, Tramp?
Just stay with me, lady. We'll have some fun. Did you ever chase chickens?
Chase chickens? Oh, my goodness, no.
Well, here's a chicken coop in back of this house. Come on, I'll show you some fun. We'll go right in the chicken house and then watch what happens.
Well, Tramp walked right in the chicken house with Lady behind him, and when those chickens saw the dogs, they started to screech and yell and run all over the place. And they ran out of the chicken house and into the street, making so much noise that people came running from their houses to see what was happening. The noise was so loud that way down the street, the dog catcher heard it. Now, the dog catcher is a man who chases stray dogs like Tramp, because dogs aren't allowed to run around the streets loose. And when he catches them, he takes them away and locks them up in the dog pound, which is sort of a jail for dogs where they can't get away. Well, this dog catcher came running up to see what the noise was, and when he saw the dogs, he chased them, caught them in his big net, locked them in his truck, and drove off to the dog jail. When they got to the jail, the dog catcher put Lady and Tramp in a room with a lot of other dogs and locked the door.
Oh, Tramp, we're locked in. And who are all those other dogs?
Don't worry, lady. These dogs are all friends of mine. That pretty little light-haired dog with a hair in her eyes is Peg. She's a Pekingese.
Hello, lady. Welcome to our jail.
And that tall dog with a long nose is Boris, the Russian wolfhound.
Ah, my little Boblichki. Do not be afraid. We are all your friends in here.
Come on over here, lady, and I'll introduce you to some more of my friends. Here's an English bulldog, lady. We call him Bull, and he looks mean, but he's really very nice.
Blimey, she's a pretty one. A regular bloomin' lady, for real.
And that funny little dog right next to him is a dachshund. All he ever thinks about is getting out of this jail.
If I could just dig a hole deep enough, I could go under the wall and come up on the other side. Ugh, I'd like to get out.
And I'd like to get out, too. Oh, I want to go home.
Don't cry, lady. We'd all like to go home, if we had homes to go to. That's what we all really want, isn't it, fellas?
A home, if I only had one.
Blimey, yes. There's nothing like home sweet home.
Tramp, I'm so homesick. How do we ever get out of here?
You don't, lady, unless a man or a woman who wants to give you a home takes you out. Wait, listen, someone's coming.
It's Jim, my master. I can tell by his walk. Maybe he heard I was here and he's come to get me.
Yes, it was Jim. While Lady was away, the cats had knocked over the canary cage again, and this time he knew it was the cats who had been bad and not Lady. So he asked Aunt Sarah to take her cats and leave, and then he went out to look for Lady. When he found her at the dog pound, he was so happy that he gave her a big kiss and started to take her home.
Come on, Lady. Ah, that's a good girl. You're coming home with me. What's the matter? Don't you want to come home? Come back here. Where are you going? What's the matter with you, Lady?
Well, much as Lady wanted to get out of that jail, she wouldn't go home with Jim. And do you know why? Because she didn't want to leave Tramp behind. So she ran over and put her head next to Tramp's. And pretty soon, Jim realized that she wanted Tramp to come along, too. So he arranged with a dog catcher to take Tramp out of jail. When they got home, both Tramp and Lady were allowed in the house, and Tramp was even given a collar. Jock and Trusty, Lady's good friends from next door, were very happy to see her back.
It's good to have you back again, Lady.
Yes, it is, Miss Lady. And it's nice to have Tramp with us, too.
It's so good to be home. I'll never run away again, although I am glad I found Tramp.
From now on, it's home sweet home for me.
Well, that's the story of Lady and Tramp. Of course, there are still some dogs at the dog pound, and maybe if you want a dog someday, that might be a good place to find one.
This is the story of Mr. J. Thaddeus Toad, who lived in a large castle known as Toad Hall in a little town in England. A toad was an unusual creature, for he never seemed to have enough excitement. He was always off on some new adventure, and his latest interest was a horse named Cyril, whom he drove across the countryside in a bright yellow cart.
Tally-ho, 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 Cyril, tally-ho. Where are we going, Governor? Are we on our way to Nottingham, to Brittingham, to Buckingham, or any hammy hamlet by the sea?
No! Are we on our way to Devonshire, to Lancashire, to Worcestershire? I'm not so sure, we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, are we on our way to Dover, or going merrily over the jolly old road that leads to Plymouth Hoe?
No! We're merrily, 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 merrily on our way to nowhere in particular. We're merrily, 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 merrily on our way, though the roads are perpendicular. We're always in a hurry.
We have no time to stall.
We've got to be there, we've got to be there, but where we can't recall. Whoops! We're merrily, 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 merrily on our way to nowhere at all.
Well, that was Toad, wild, reckless, and incorrigible. And while he drove off over the countryside, back at his home, there was no one to take care of Toad Hall, and things were getting to be in a terrible shape. Fortunately, however, Toad had 3 good friends who wanted to help him and were trying to get his house in order. One was Angus MacBadger, who carefully went over Toad's books and accounts.
Oh, why did I ever assume the responsibility of looking after such a reckless adventurer? Bills, bills, bills. How can I ever lay hands on the money to pay them?
The other 2 friends were Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole, who were better known as Ratty and Moley.
I say, something has got to be done about Toad.
But Ratty, don't you think if we talk to him that we could get him to stop this silly business?
But talking did little good, and his 3 friends got together for tea one afternoon to discuss it.
I'm practically a nervous wreck. Something's got to be done about Toad. This time he's gone too far.
But he promised us.
Promises, huh? What good are his promises when these wild ideas take him?
I'm afraid MacBadger's right, Moley. We can no longer depend on Toad's promises. It's time we took matters into our own hands.
And so McBadger, Ratty, and Moley started out to bring the reckless Toad back to Toad Hall. Unfortunately, however, they were a little late, for that very afternoon, while Toad and his horse Cyril were resting by the roadside, a big, bright red motor car came chugging by, driven by a bunch of weasels. Toad had never seen a motor car before, and...
Hey, look! Gad, what is it?
Lummy, Governor, it's a motor car.
A motor car? A motor car? Gad, what have I been missing?
well... As Toad saw that, a new idea came into his head, and he started off after that motor car, bouncing and chugging down the road as if he were a car himself. Honk, 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 honk. Toady was transfixed with rapture. You could tell it was love at first sight as he pulled up behind the car and watched. The motor car stopped at a tavern, which wasn't so very far, and he watched while the tough-looking weasels got out of the lovely red car. Now, weasels, you know, are deceitful and not to be trusted at all. But how could Toady know they'd stolen that car? He didn't have a crystal ball. But Toady wasn't one to dally. He made up his mind like a flash.
Get in the back seat,
He said to Cyril.
Well, I see what they'll take for it. Cash.
Into the tavern went Toady, where the keeper was back of the bar, and he said,
Cheerio, tavern keeper. Who's the owner of that hot-looking car?
The keeper, a codger named Winky, leaned over the bar and said, Why? Toady answered,
That car must be mine. Whatever the price is, I'll buy.
But Toad found that he had no money, so he promptly offered a trade. The weasels appeared to be willing. In a moment, the bargain was made. Then Toady drew up a paper with almost incredible speed, and he called on old Winky the keeper to pop over and witness the deed. Now, Toady was not a bit stingy. He never did anything small. The weasels gave him the red motor car, and he gave the weasels Toad Hall. Traded Toad Hall. A castle worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for a red motor car? Hard to believe, isn't it? And when it turned out that it was a stolen car, and Toad told the police he had traded Toad Hall for it, well, they wouldn't believe him. So the police took Toad to jail for car stealing. Well, it turned out that the weasels were thieves, and Winky the tavern keeper was their leader. But there was no way for Toad to prove that he hadn't stolen the car, so he was locked up in a cell. But, as you know, Toad was a clever rascal, and before long... Toad escaped. Off he ran, with the police in full chase. They even had bloodhounds on his trail. But Toad was smart. He ran to the railway station, hopped onto an engine, and before the engineer could stop him, Toad was streaking down the tracks at full speed, leaving the police behind, shooting at him with their revolvers. Well, Toad got away without being hit. And of course, he went right to the only real friends he had, Ratty, Moley, and McBadger. You can imagine their surprise when he got to their house.
Toad, good heavens.
Why, it's Toad. Did you get out on good behavior?
What's happened? What are you doing here?
I've escaped. You must help me. Winky and the weasels have a paper that will prove I'm innocent. The deed I signed, giving them Toad Hall.
Well, Ratty, Moley, and McBadger weren't ones to let down an old friend. So off they went to Toad Hall to see if Winky and the weasels might be there. Sure enough, they were, and since it was late at night, they were all asleep. So into the castle crept the four old friends.
Quiet, no. Dinna wake anyone up, or we'll be in terrible trouble. They all have knives.
There's Winky sleeping on that couch, and he has the deed there in his pocket.
Get it, Toady, that's the boy.
I've got it. I've got the paper. Now, let's get out of here.
Molly, look out! Dinna trip over that stool.
Oh, I'm...
What's that? Who's there?
Now you've done it. You've woken them up.
Run! Run for it!
Get him! Get him, you blokes! They've got the deed!
Toad, Moley, Ratty, and MacBadger ran as fast as they could, the Weasels and Winky running after them. Knives were flying through the air, and it looked for a while as if they might get caught. But they managed to run through the door of Toad Hall in time to shut it right in the face of the Weasels. And the Weasels ran smack into it. Knocking themselves unconscious. Winky, too. Well, with the paper as proof, it wasn't hard for Toad to convince the police that he was innocent. So Winky and the Weasels were rounded up and put in jail, and Toad moved back into Toad Hall. He had quieted down a little after his experience, for he realized that he had certain responsibilities that could not be left to others. Ratty and Moley and MacBadger came to see him often, in fact, almost every afternoon for tea.
2 lumps, Toad?
If you please.
It's nice to have you back in Toad Hall.
And see that you stay put, Todd.
Oh, you needn't worry, lads. It's Toad Hall for me. Could I have another pot of tea, if you please?
Well, that's the story of Mr. Toad, Mr. J. Thaddeus Toad of Toad Hall. He learned quite a bit from his experience. It's something that we can all think about and learn something from, too.
Hear that strange and exciting music? Those are bagpipes, playing the songs of the proud men who live in the mountains of Scotland. Highlanders, they're called. They tell many wonderful stories, the Highlanders do, and one of their favorites is about Rob Roy, who lived more than 200 years ago. Rob was for Robert, and Roy was the Highlanders' word for red, because Rob Roy was a red-headed man. His last name was MacGregor, and he was the brave leader of all the Scotsmen with that name, the Clan MacGregor. When the bagpipes sounded like this, it meant that the MacGregors were happy. And this was the music they played on the joyous day when their chief, Rob Roy, was married. Rob Roy, of course, was the happiest of them all.
To my fair and bonny bride, Helen Mary.
3 cheers for Rob Roy and Helen Mary!
Come, MacGregors, let us all dance now.
And then suddenly the sound of the bagpipes died away, for into the happy party marched a group of soldiers, and their officer's face was very stern as he spoke to the MacGregors.
I come to read a message from the King of England. The king says that because the Clan MacGregor does not obey all his orders, it shall be against the law from now on for anyone to call himself by the name MacGregor.
What do you say to this, Rob Roy?
I know who's to blame for this wicked law. It is not the work of the king, but of the Duke of Montrose, who wants to take away all our lands.
Silence! I have another message. I am to arrest the chief of your clan, Rob Roy.
And so they took Rob Roy prisoner. He went with the soldiers without arguing, but he knew that he must get away from them soon in order to help his people. Later that day, as the soldiers were marching Rob Roy to prison, they came to a stream.
Let's cross here, men. Get along there, Rob MacGregor.
But like a flash, Rob Roy suddenly dove under the water and swam out into the deep part of the stream.
Look out, men! Rob Roy's escaping! He's swimming toward the waterfall!
Yes, Rob Roy was really swimming toward a waterfall, but he knew this river well, and over the fall he went without hurting himself at all. The soldiers couldn't follow him. Their officer was angry.
We'll catch you yet, Rob Roy!
No, you won't. Not while your Duke of Montrose makes my clansmen sour. You tell him this. As long as he bothers the McGregors, he'd better beware of Rob Roy.
When the bagpipes sounded like this, it meant that the McGregors were sad. And they had good reason to be sad, for while their chief, Rob Roy, was hiding in the hills, the Duke of Montrose sent his roughest soldiers to call the McGregors together and collect the rent. When the crowd had gathered, the officer spoke to the nearest McGregor.
All right, pay your money here.
There you are.
Now, pay it again.
No. The Duke of Montrose has no right to make us pay double rent.
Oh, he has no right, eh? This pistol is his right. Now pay it again. That's better. Of course, you can have all that money back if you wish. It's a reward for the man who leads us to Rob Roy.
Looking for Rob Roy, are you? Well, here I am.
Yes, it was Rob Roy himself. He had slipped in quietly behind the soldiers and completely surprised them. Before they could catch their breath, the McGregors took their pistols away. Rob Roy spoke again.
We'll throw these pistols into the lake, and you soldiers will return every penny of the extra rent. Then tell your master this. Catch me if you can, but leave my clansmen alone.
With that, Rob Roy slipped away as quickly as he had come, back into the hills. And whenever the Duke or his men would harm a McGregor, Rob Roy would suddenly appear again, striking back in unexpected ways, even stealing from the Duke of Montrose himself. But though he escaped each time as if by magic, Rob Roy was only one man against many. The Duke's soldiers were causing great unhappiness amongst the McGregors, and finally Rob Roy decided that it was time for the whole clan to join him. This was the battle music of the McGregors. Rob Roy was very angry now and ready to fight anyone who stood in his way, even though this would start a war with the King of England. Rob Roy's best friend, the Duke of Argyll, went to far-off London to try to explain to the king.
Your Highness, Rob Roy means well, but he's angry now, and he is ready to go to war, even against you.
Rob Roy is a stubborn man. I must send my army to punish him. What is that sound?
Your Highness, it is the bagpipes of the McGregors. It is Rob Roy.
Rob Roy, what are you doing here?
Your Highness, we have marched all this way in search of justice. We do not wish to hurt innocent people in a war. We ask you to give us back our name of McGregor and allow us to live in peace.
Rob Roy, you are a good man, and I give you back your name. The Duke of Montrose has misled me about you, and he is the one who shall be punished.
Thank you, Your Highness.
And so the proud Clan McGregor marched back to the Highlands of Scotland, and brave Rob Roy, with his bonny bride Helen Mary, lived happily till the end of his days.